Hey friends, I'm Kristina Guerrero, former small-town girl with dreams of Hollywood and red carpets and a belief that I could make those dreams come true. So, I did. But life had more in store for me. From a drinking problem to getting sober, then a breast cancer diagnosis, and finding God, I discovered a strength in me I never knew I had. I wrote a memoir about my life she believed she could. So in each episode, I'm sharing one chapter from my story. From page to podcast, this is She Believed. Hey friends, welcome to She Believed. I am your host, Kristina Guerrero. This is episode 6, and you guys, I can't believe we're here. So as you may or may not know, I am doing a 10-episode limited series based on my memoir, She Believed She Could. Each episode is a different chapter from my book, and I really thought 10 was a nice number, right? 10 episodes, 10 chapters, 10 different themes. And so we're on the other side of that, and I'm just super excited and grateful for anybody who has tuned in. You know who I know for a fact is listening right now is my mom. Hi, Mom. You know, she's a proud mom, of course. She's so proud of what I'm working on. But I had an interesting conversation with her yesterday. Gosh, Mom, I hope you don't mind that I'm sharing this. But while I knew my mom and my family would be listening, I hope that they would be listening. What I didn't take into account was that they were going to be discovering sides of me that they didn't really know existed. And that honestly was on purpose. That was by design. I think that in my life, I have certainly put on many masks, right? As we all do, different personas, or, put on this kind of facade that everything's great, everything's perfect. And I definitely did that with my family. Maybe I need to deep dive that one and figure out why I did that, why I never felt that I could authentically be myself with my family. And it's not because they expected a certain version of me. I think that they would probably have preferred the broken version of me, to be honest, than the shiny, bright, perfect version that I tried to put on for everybody. But yeah, it was interesting to talk to my mom and kind of hear from her that she didn't know so many things about me. And a lot of the things that she didn't know about me were the harder things that I just, like I said, I just kind of kept under wraps. Everything's great. Everything's fine. In fact, when I was diagnosed with breast cancer and finally had to tell my mom, honestly, if I could have gone the entire breast cancer journey without telling my mom, I would have. My mom is a worrier. My mom's a worrier. And I remember telling her, Mom, I have breast cancer, but don't worry, it's not a big deal. It's totally fine. It's better than fine. She's like, what? You have breast cancer? I'm like, yes, but it's fine. I'm pretty sure on the conversation on the phone call that I had with her, I was like, it's not that big of a deal. It's totally fine. Pretty sure I said it's fine 17 million times. But again, by design, I wanted to paint this picture of, I don't know if it was perfection. It certainly wasn't always perfection. It was this picture of I did it. I said I was going to do it. And not only am I doing it, I am doing it so well that everything is so fine and everything is so perfect. So I know a lot of it hurts her. Hi, Mom. Hi. I know a lot of it is probably painful for her to hear in terms of, the things that I held on to from my childhood, but also the big, huge missteps and stumbles that I made as an adult. And so I'm fine sharing this part of me with you, but for whatever reason, that feels safer to me than really letting the people that I love, letting them know the real me. That's definitely a therapy session that I need to unpack. And now actually having talked to her, it made it even more real that, oh yeah, I'm really sharing this side of me. I'm really being truthful. I'm really being honest with people, and they're hearing it and they're being affected by it in great ways. Oh my gosh, the messages that I've received from people who are like, you get me. Like, I totally understand what you're saying. You're like taking the words right out of my mouth. Yes, but also this version of me that I am so happy, that I am so perky, that everything's fine. Everything is so fine. Do you see how big I'm smiling? I'm smiling so big because everything is so fine. And maybe it wasn't always so fine. With that being said, I've been so blessed in my life. And while this is an overarching journey for me, right? I also hope it is abundantly clear that the way that I was created, the way that God created me to be, is hope and light and optimism and joy. And that is also who I am. And I hold that so dearly. I'm so grateful for those parts of me. But that's not always life, right? That's not the whole story. And really, I guess that's the whole point of this podcast, is that, we see a certain side of people. I have been on TV and I've been in magazines and have been in the public eye for a long time. And so I've put on this face of happiness and quasi perfection, but that's not the whole story. And that's certainly not the whole story for everybody. Did any of that make sense? Hi, Mom. So today we are moving on from my drinking problem. Thank the Lord. Put down the bottle of wine, Guerrero. No, we are moving on from my drinking problem. And, when I did get sober, I had to look at all of these parts of me that got myself into that position in the first place, right? Like, how did I end up here? And looking at the parts of me that I really didn't want to come to terms with, or that I had kind of locked away, and got me to a place where I felt like I had to constantly numb myself, right? That I had to constantly drink in order to be fun, in order to be a person that people wanted to be with. Which, I mean, if you're around people, like I've been around people who drink a lot. I mean, hello, I'm one of them. It's not fun. So I don't know what I was thinking. I don't know how many times people are like, she can tell the story all over again. This is quite annoying. Yeah. So all that to say is I had to really dig deep into what it was that got me into this place. And one of those things was a lack of self-worth, an insecurity, a feeling of not belonging. And where did that come from? So without further ado, I'm going to read you a chapter from my book. This chapter is called Ed McMahon Will Save Us. All right, you guys ready for a little blast from the past, taking you back to the 1990s? Which doesn't seem that long ago, but good grief, it is. Okay, here we go. For those born after 1990, trust me when I tell you that if you received the big fat envelope from Publishers Clearinghouse Sweepstakes, a magazine subscription marketing company saying, you may already be a winner, you paid attention. When that envelope arrived at my grandma's house, I ripped it open and took out a page of stamps, each with a different magazine title. The rules said no purchase necessary, but I figured it would probably help my chances if I ordered the merch. I scanned the many choices and picked out my favorites, likely Teen Beat, Bop, and 17. Then I walked across the gravel road, slid it back into our mailbox, lifted the red flag so the mailman would take it, and waited. I was confident our luck was about to change. Ed McMahon, the spokesperson from the Publishers Clearinghouse Sweepstakes, was about to save us. Our money problems would be solved. We were going to be rich, and I deeply felt it in my gut. It was just a matter of time before Ed and the Prize Patrol van would drive down our gravel road, knock on our door, and with balloons and a giant $1 million check paid out to my mom, would change our lives forever. I could already see it. With our prize money, we could move out of Grandma's house and live in a pretty house on Harrison Hill. In Sunnyside, that was where the pretty houses were. I could have my own room and even my own bed. We could buy a car that didn't squeal every time it accelerated when it was cold outside or overheated in the summer. Our damn car was always on the verge of a breakdown. With the prize money, I could take a brown paper bag lunch to school like the rich kids. Oh, what I wouldn't give to have a ham and cheese sandwich stuffed in a Ziploc baggie, some Doritos, an apple, and a chocolate chip cookie packed in a brown paper bag, neatly folded at the top with my name written lovingly on the front by my stay-at-home mom. I could finally be like the rich kids who ate their lunch first, while the rest of the free lunchers waited in line for beef stroganoff and lukewarm milk. With our prize money, we could shop at Safeway instead of the bargain grocery store price choppers. Everyone knew that the rich people shopped at Safeway and the poor people shopped at Price Chopper. I would no longer be mortified if I saw anyone I knew at Price Chopper. Great. Now they know I'm poor. It didn't occur to my 10-year-old brain that they might be poor too. With our prize money, not only could we shop at Safeway, my mom wouldn't have to use food stamps to pay for groceries anymore. She wouldn't have to count out the monopoly-looking paper money to pay for milk, government cheese, and generic cornflakes, which were the worst. For some reason, as a way to punish poor kids maybe, the generic cornflakes always turned into a soggy and disgusting mess as soon as the milk hit the bowl. I loathed generic and government-approved cereal and looked at that box with disdain. But with our prize money, we could buy Captain Crunch berries, which was so the opposite of soggy. The crunchy cereal nuggets would puncture the roof of my mouth, and the berries would turn my sugary milk a pretty shade of pink. With the prize money, my mom wouldn't need the welfare check the state of Washington gave her to house, feed, and clothe all 5 of us kids, which was hardly enough and is why we had to live with my grandma, ate soggy cornflakes, and rarely had new clothes. With the prize money, maybe Santa Claus would actually show up every Christmas, not just some of them. What's that dude got against poor people anyway? With the prize money, my mom wouldn't have to work so hard to always come up short. With the prize money, our lives would never be the same. Then, one morning, my mom said, "Get ready, kids, we're going to Yakima for the day." Yakima was the big town to our small town and was 30 minutes away, which usually meant we'd be gone all day. What if Ed comes, I thought? Would someone else be entitled to our payday if we weren't home? Did the rules say you have to be present to win? So I left him a note. "Ed, we went shopping. We'll be back soon." Ed and the Price Patrol never showed up. And come to think of it, those magazines never showed up either. A couple years ago, my mom said to me, "Yes, we were poor. Can you let it go already?" I think more than anything, she just didn't want to hear it, right? Mom, am I right? Calling in from Washington. Mom, hello, are you there? No, she's not here. Right? How often do you need to hear from your kids, "Man, we were poor. Sorry, I couldn't give you all the things I wanted to give you." That probably gets pretty freaking old. I know with my kids, it would get old with me too. And here I am in my 40s, still affected by the poverty that we lived in. And so much of that drove my ambition and my survival instincts. That feeling of knowing we were poor and feeling less than because we were poor. Now, let me be clear. I grew up in a very working class town, right? Sunnyside, Washington is an agricultural town. It was predominantly Mexicano. It was predominantly Mexican-American. And I think it felt that way anyway. And so it's not like I was surrounded. It's not like I grew up in Beverly Hills or I was surrounded by affluence or wealth or anything like that. However, at a very young age, I happened to find the friends with the money in Sunnyside. And so, hi friends, you know who you are. And so how could you not experience the haves from the have-nots? And specifically me, because I did find this group of friends who were the haves, and it was very obvious that I was the have-nots. And so that affected me and affected my self-worth at a very, very young age. I didn't want to be poor. Who wants to be poor? Nobody wants to be poor, but I was very acutely aware of it, you know, like, I don't know that my sister, for instance, my older sister, I should call her Melissa, you're on the phone now. Call her, go ahead. If my older sister was affected the way I was affected by it, but it really made me feel small. It really made me feel not good enough. And I'm not just talking, yes, there was the big stuff, big for an 11-year-old, right? Like that I didn't get the name brand that I wanted, that I didn't get the cool sneakers that I wanted, that I didn't get to join the, AAU basketball league, that I didn't have the right equipment for sports, that there was those things, right? But then there was like the bigger things, like the fact that we had to live with my grandma, for instance, the fact that we didn't have our own bed for a really long time, that we lived in a house that, where weeds were coming up through the ground in my bedroom, right? The fact that my mom used food stamps and welfare to provide for us. I hated going to the welfare office. Like literally, I'm like, oh my God, what if somebody sees me? They're going to know I'm poor. Again, going back to that whole thing, like, I guess if they're at the welfare office, they're probably poor too. But it was, it was a culmination of all of those things, getting our food from food banks to just feeling like, just knowing that we were poor and knowing that it sucked, and having Christmases where presents didn't show up, and not understanding what the heck was up with this Santa Claus guy. Actually, just not even believing in Santa Claus, right? So a lot of people grow up poor. And, if I'm being honest, I'm super grateful for a lot of those experiences, because it gave me a hustle and an ambition and a not going back survival instinct that really has served me so much in my life. I started working by the time I was 14 years old, making $1 an hour. I worked as a receptionist when I was in high school. I worked at Red Robin as a host, and then as a server. And I was just always hustling. And here's why, is because I knew that my mom, as hard as she worked, didn't make a whole lot of money. And so if there was anything that I wanted, then I was going to have to pay for it, right? So if I wanted new clothes for school, I was going to have to pay for it. If I needed new sneakers, or wanted to be a cheerleader, or wanted to go on a trip, or wanted to put gas in my car, I was going to have to do that. If I wanted a car, I was going to have to pay for that. And so it instilled in me a work ethic that I am so grateful for. So nothing was handed to me, right? There was no fallback plan. I couldn't go home to mom and just be like, hey, mom, I kind of blew it and everything fell apart. Can I, borrow a bunch of money to, get through the next whatever few months? Or my mom just didn't have it. As much as she wanted to be able to give it to us, she just didn't have it. And so it gave me an incredible work ethic. And for that, mother, I know my mom's listening right now, and she's like, I'm so sorry. I tried my best. And I tell her, yes, oh my gosh, thank you so much for that experience, because while it was hard, it built character and survival. And I wouldn't be here today 1000% without it. And so I want to be very clear about that. In fact, I have difficulties with my children now because we're in a position to be able to give them more. And I'm like, how do we teach them the value of $1 and working hard when we're able to give them everything? And so that's been very challenging. I'm like, I don't want to be poor now as an adult, but I don't want them to think that they're rich, that they can get whatever they want, and mom and dad are just going to be here for them in that way, right? I want to instill a work ethic in them. So for that, I am super grateful. Now, how did I weave my drinking problem back to that feeling of unworthiness? Well, I think that's it. I felt very unworthy. I felt like I didn't belong. Even as a little girl, while I hung out with the kids who had things, right? And when I say things, I'm talking like real deal Pepsi, okay? We're not talking Ferraris. We're not talking, trips to Europe, very working class area. So we're not talking affluence like we see today. Certainly was not that at all. But I felt from a very young age that the amount of money that I made was tied to my worthiness, right? So growing up, I was the poor little brown girl who no one took seriously, who no one paid attention to, who worked really hard to impress teachers. Look how smart I am. But it wasn't really met with the kind of enthusiasm that maybe somebody with more money had, right? And so I thought, well, if I can make money, if I can be somebody, if I can have nice things, if I can have a nice car and a nice house and go travel and do all these things, then I am worthy. Then I am important. Then I am not the poor little brown girl that I saw myself as. And so I worked. And it wasn't just like, oh, I worked hard. I worked in a business that could pay me very well and could give me a platform to show everybody, look how great I'm doing. Look, I have glam team. Look, I'm on TV. Look, I interview movie stars. Look, I drive nice cars. I have beautiful convertible and I have a beautiful home and I live in Hollywood and I shop I was never a shopper, but I wear fancy clothes that are very expensive and shoes that have red bottoms. Like, look at how important I am. Look at how worthy I am. I wasn't worthy of the stuff. I was worthy because I had the stuff. And surprise, it didn't make me feel better. Like on the surface, sure. Like I was like, oh, I have nice things. I have a nice car. I have the dream car, right? The convertible to drive down the Pacific Coast Highway and with the wind blowing in my hair. But even all that stuff didn't make me feel, it didn't work. It didn't fix me. It didn't fix me because all of those feelings, all of those insecurities and those feelings of self-worth are not tied to money, right? They're tied to our own hearts and our own souls and our own ideas of who we are and where we come from, right? Bigger purpose. And so having all of those things and having money didn't make me feel not like the poor little brown girl. In fact, it made me feel even more anxious that people would find out who I really was. I was the poor little brown girl. And once all of this goes away, that's who you're going to be again. Or no amount of makeup, no amount of lipstick, no amount of pretty shoes and pretty clothes is going to make you any better because you are always the poor little brown girl. Money don't fix everything. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'd much rather be rich and depressed than poor and depressed. Am I right? But we see it all the time, right? People who have everything, who have big houses and tons of money and are miserable, are unhappy. Because while money offers a freedom, you're still you, right? You still have to be with you. So all that stuff didn't fix me. I tried. But yeah, it was interesting because growing up, I very much saw myself as the have-nots. And even when I was living in Hollywood and making money and hanging out with affluence, I still very much felt like they were the haves and I was the have-nots. And so what did I do? What did I do to numb those feelings? What did I do to silence those little voices? Well, we know where that story is headed, right? Yeah, it did feel great to have gone from where I started, right? And the way that I was raised in that kind of, I don't want to take away from what I accomplished. I'm super proud of it. I really am. I'm very proud of it. You know, I went from a girl who came from nothing, had a dream, had a belief in myself, and she did. And I did. I got the money, I got the house, I got the cars, I got the clothes, I got the trips, you know. And so that success, I don't take away from that success. I'm so proud that I was able to get there. My point is, the biggest thing is, if I thought that that was going to fix me, if I thought that that was going to make me feel better, I was sorely mistaken. Are all of those things amazing and great? And did I accomplish them? And should I feel proud of myself? Absolutely. But was I looking to those things to fix me, to make me feel worthy, to make me feel better? Because they didn't. They made me like they were cool and they were super fun, but that deep-seated feeling of unworthiness, those childhood traumas that we experienced, they were not going to be fixed by that. They were not going to be fixed by money. They were going to be fixed by the work that I'm now doing, right? No matter how much money, they were not going to be fixed by that. So I had this idea that once I'm on TV and I'm national and I'm, you know, interviewing movie stars like I told them that I would, then I'm going to feel worthy. And maybe I did for a hot second, but that's not sustainable because it wasn't real. Because it wasn't the real work that I needed to do within myself to make myself feel worthy. So there's that connection, right? Not feeling worthy, feeling a lot of shame about not having things, and then recognizing that I worked and had this relentless ambition because one, I just think that I was built that way, but another was out of fear. Right? I had to work and I had to make money and I had to make a lot of money because I didn't want to be poor ever again. And so that kind of anxiety, that kind of control really took its toll on me. And it's something that I'm like trying to break free from still to this day. Right? There is that money scarcity mindset, and I am guilty of having this and have had this my entire life. I hold on super tight. Right? Some people might call me cheap. They might call me frugal. They might call me, gosh, I hope you don't call me tight. Sure they have, because I hold on to money so tightly sometimes because I'm afraid it's not going to be there, right? It's not coming from a place of greed. It's coming from a place of fear. And that has been really, really challenging for me to break free of that habit and that thought pattern. Okay, who out there knows what I'm talking about, right? You grow up poor and then it stays with you no matter how much money you've made, no matter how much success you've had. You have money in the bank, you can pay your bills, and yet it never feels like enough. Like it feels like it can go away at any minute. And that is like, for me, that has been truly some work that I have done that I continue to do. Right. And I mean, it's simple stuff, right? Not big stuff. It's simple stuff, right? It's buying I used to bust my mom for buying generic cereal. And here I am buying generic soda for Mateo. And he's like, Mom, this is embarrassing. I'm like, it's much better value. I can't take this to school. And recognizing that all of that comes from fear. I wish I could say it's just because I'm really good with money, but no, it comes from fear. It comes from fear. It comes from that little girl in there who's like, we don't want to be poor again. Don't make bad choices. Don't let this money go. Don't stop hustling. Don't stop spinning. Don't stop working. We can't ever go back to that. But yeah, no, I'm tightly wound when it comes to money. I'm so envious of people who have a healthy relationship with money. I'm not talking about the people who who just spend money like nothing. I'm talking about the people who don't think twice when it comes to ordering guacamole. Those are the people I'm like, you didn't even think twice about spending an extra $2 on guacamole. Like that is the kind of mindset that I have. And I have been really working hard to order that guac. No, I've really been working hard to let that mindset go, right? Because anybody who knows anything about abundance or manifestations or energy of money knows that you can't hold on to it. You hold on to it too tight, it never grows. And in my thinking, I'm like, yeah, but if you let go, God, it could be God forever. But you know what's helped? If you're in this situation and you feel me, you know what has helped is my faith. I have believed in God to cure me of my cancer. I have believed in God to get me out of my alcohol addiction. I have believed in God to help me make my dreams come true. And what I realize is that God is a generous God and that God will always provide. Will He provide all the things that I want Him to provide? Will He provide the big, huge mansion and the trips across the world and tons of money in the bank? Maybe. But has He provided for me in the past? Do I have what I need? Do I have what my kids need? Yeah. And have I had more than enough? Yes. And have I had less than peanuts? Also, yes. But am I still here? Yes. Having that kind of faith and not only just surrendering those big things to God, right? But also surrendering my financial fears to God and just trusting hey, I'm really getting this wrong. I really am not good with this. And I'm just asking that you provide for me and for my family. And guess what? When I am not thinking about that fear, I'm being provided for. And so that has helped me tremendously. I saw this meme recently and it said something like, dream bigger because God's got the checkbook. And I'm like, but does He have my Venmo? Does He know where to send it? Is this a PayPal situation? You let me know. But isn't it funny, going back to my original story about Ed McMahon? Who remembers Ed McMahon? He was the announcer, I think, on Late Night with Johnny Carson. Maybe was it Johnny Carson? Then he became the spokesperson for the Publishers Clearinghouse, which from what I understand still exists. But just being so acutely aware of money at such a young age, and then that kind of staying with me, it really makes me think about my kids and the kind of lessons and values when it comes to money that I'm instilling in them. I had Sebastian, who's 5, we were at the grocery store and he said, Mommy, how much is that? And I said, it's $5.99. He goes, oh, wow, that's really expensive. I'm like, okay. Mom, how much did we pay for our house? We paid $1 for our house. I don't know. And he said, that's a good deal. So my 5-year-old is already acknowledging the value of money, but I don't know if am I doing it right? Probably not. Let's be honest, I'm doing it all wrong. I don't ever want my kids to worry about money, but I want my kids to value money. And so mainly we worried about not having money and the things we weren't getting because we didn't have money, right? We didn't ask for stuff because it was just like, we don't have the money. And so, trying to figure out how to not give my kids everything because we can. I'm just trying to figure out how to teach my children the value of money and the value of work ethic, but also not ever having them be afraid of money. I also realized that like no amount of money ever made me feel secure, right? So even when I was making more money than I could have imagined, it didn't make me feel any more secure because that can just be, I always felt like that could just be taken away at any minute. The money security never, I don't know what number that would be because there was times that I'm like, once I make this amount of money, then I'll feel secure. And then I'd make that much money. And then I'm like, nope, once I make this much money, then I will feel secure. Nope. Okay, once I make this much money, I mean, there's a pattern here, right? There's not a number. I don't know. But it is still something that I actively work towards still to this day. But also recognizing that my value and my worth does not come from how much money I have in the bank or the kind of car that I drive or the kind of house that I have or the kind of clothes that I wear. That is not where my value comes from. And I feel that so deeply. I feel that in a way that I have never felt before. And I wish I would have picked that up earlier. I could have probably like enjoyed my life a little bit more if I had recognized that having all the stuff and all the money in the bank and all that stuff was not going to make me feel better. The work that I did internally was where the change was really going to come from, which is where the value actually comes from. Anyway, I don't know. Was that a good episode? I don't know. All over the place. Okay, so all of that ambition, all of that drive that I had to get out of the situation that I was in and to take me to Hollywood, guys, we're finally here. I'm taking you to Hollywood. Hooray for Hollywood. So next episode, we are going to Hollywood and my time at E! News, which I don't know. I feel super privileged in saying this, but I was there at the height of entertainment and celebrity news, and I got to experience some of the coolest stuff. But also it was met with surprise, a lot of anxiety and imposter syndrome. Dun, dun, dun. So we're going to dive deep into that. Anyway, guys, if you ever see me at Chipotle and I am debating on whether to get the guac, just be like, Kristina, order the extra guac. All right, guys, thanks so much for joining me. And we'll see you next time. Bye.
Hey, you're still here. Man, your dedication to get to the end, that's inspiring. I'd be so grateful if you hit that follow button and share this episode. And if you really loved it, hey, leave a review, because validation is my love language. Until next time, in the immortal words of Journey, don't stop believing.